Who's that guy?
Thanks very much for coming. I'm speaking to Jimmy Chamberlin, drummer with the Smashing Pumpkins and now CEO of Live One Inc., new streaming service. The first question I want to ask is about the music business in the 90s. I mean, your success totally exemplified that boom. I was just wondering if there was a characteristic thing about that time you can remember that doesn't happen now and that really kind of characterizes it.
I think probably the obvious answer is MTV. I think MTV was a real bellwether moment in the evolution of the music business in that it created an entirely new medium in which to market to consumers. It opened up another cultural component of music consumption. It allowed musicians to not only be heard, but to be seen now in ways that were previous to that unavailable. And also allowed us to kind of drive culture in unique ways through fashion, through video, and all of the economics around video at that point, although it started off slowly, became easily justifiable just because of the favorable market economic ramifications that video would have. And the budget started off for the Pumpkins anyway in the $30,000 to $40,000 range for a video, but at the end, at the peak moment of MTV, we were able to justify. I think we spent up to $1.1 million on the Tonight Tonight video, which to us, by today's standards, seems completely crazy, and is almost equal to a modern movie budget. But at the time, was completely justifiable in that you could quantify all of the metrics that you were getting back. It would drive record sales. It would drive live ticket sales. It would drive the culture in a way that it really was the last kind of bastion or the last way that rock stars were created. And even if you look today at like the modern kind of rock star, say somebody like Chris Martin or maybe not Dave Grohl, because Dave Grohl lived in the video age, but anybody kind of knew, back in the 90s, MTV was such a huge part of the culture that you couldn't walk down the street if you had a video on MTV, you would just get mobbed. I mean, everybody who participated in the culture, which was everybody from 15 to 35, knew who you were. And that really has gone away with video. And I know Vivo is still out there and people are still making videos, but it's just not as pervasive in the culture as MTV was.
Yeah, no, certainly.
It really was kind of for the music business. It was really that kind of Twitter moment, that kind of Facebook moment. If there's a kind of comparison to today's tech space.
Yeah, I mean, was there a point at which you started to think? When did the idea of streaming your concerts come about? When's the point where playing live suddenly became the bit that could be monetized rather than making records?
As far as streaming video, it really was probably MySpace that really brought it to our attention. And we looked at, as early as 1998, I remember talking to David Bowie about streaming, and David had an idea that at some point we would be able to just create an idealized concert and people would simply go to their televisions and consume it, and the artist would never have to tour again. Yeah. And that's a real testament to kind of David's forward thinking at the time. Yeah. But fast forward to 2004, 2005, we started to look at live streaming as another potential economic source. We partnered up with MySpace. We did an event from Madrid. We streamed it. We set up we flew an entire crew over there. We set up an idealized concert. We streamed it around the world. Millions of people showed up and watched it, but no economics took place. It was really kind of the way people were consuming the content, one person at a time, wasn't really going to drive economics in the same way that broadcast would drive economics. We would do Saturday Night Live, we would see an uptick in record sales and ticket sales the very next day, but live streaming for some reason had no uptick and no quantifiable metrics attached to it.
Yeah. So I guess that made it an unusual kind of direction for you to kind of go into then, if it seemed so unpromising.
Well, it really, that particular equation really dovetailed into my current role as CEO of Live One, and Live One does create that virtual ecosystem around live stream content where you can get the look and feel of an audience You could create opportunities to communicate both privately and open in groups, and it really does start to create that environment in which the content can be successful. And the environment really, like, if you look at content in the physical space, the environment is as important or sometimes even more important than the content. And that's really, you can really, well, that's demonstrated in like Coachella, which sells out before they even announce an artist. Yeah. And it really speaks to the environment. People want to participate in the experience. They want to participate in the, they want to experience the environment. Of course, they still want to see the musical acts, but the environment is at least as important as the content. In live streaming, there really is no equivalent. So what we try to solve for at Live One is creating communities around live stream video that allows people to feel like they're part of something, because it really is that communication, that feeling of belonging, that group kind of mentality that it enables us to monetize in and around the content.
Yeah. I mean, what have been your most successful events? How have you sort of, and how do you measure success? Is it in terms of engagement, conversations, or is it just in terms of eyeballs?
Yeah, so engagement is our primary metric. We increase engagement anywhere from 3 to 8x around an event. Our biggest event to date, we just recently did the Viva Latino Coke event from Mexico. We had over 1 million people through the widget over the weekend. Engagement increase over last year was 5x. And it's really not that complicated. It's really analogous to, like, if you open up a door and there's a band playing on stage and there's nobody in the room, really no matter how good the band sounds, you're going to make a decision of whether you're going to go in the room or not. You open up that door and it's full of people, you're going to at least think that the band's been validated and has some credibility, and that at least some people agree that the band has something to offer. If you open up that door and it's full of people in your social ecosystem and people you know, and they're having a conversation, that legitimizes the content further. So we try to take that analogy digitally and really create that look and feel on the page.
I mean, as an artist, do you worry that this is kind of detracting from the experience of the concert if people are just kind of chatting away?
No, I really don't. I think as a content creator and as a content consumer, I think we live in a really niche world. Like, take music consumption, for instance. Like, I have a vinyl record player. I have a very nice stereo that I listen to vinyl on. I also have Spotify that I listen to through my home stereo. And then when I'm streaming through my good stereo, I use Tidal because it's a better bit rate. So It's really, for me, like, it's a matter of convenience. I want to listen to music all the time, but it really, like, I have choices as to how I'm consuming that music. Yeah. Not all of them are ideal, but they all get the job done. And for me, it's really like, it's a different, like, listening to music on vinyl is a different experience than listening to music on Spotify. There's something, when I'm listening to music on Spotify, I'm generally multitasking. When I drop the needle on, a Curtis Mayfield record, I'm going to sit there and listen to it because it sounds great, and it's coming out of great speakers. So again, I think music consumption, video consumption, it's very niche. Just like some of us may have watched the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight on our phone via Periscope. I did, even though I was totally willing to pay the $100. I thought, geez, okay, I'm going to check it out on Periscope because I got there late. I was actually celebrating my anniversary in La Jolla with my wife the night of the fight. So luckily she wanted to take a shower, so I got to watch the last kind of 4 rounds without suffering too much attrition. But I thought, okay, not ideal, but I got to watch the fight. And when people asked me about the fight, I was able to kind of say, okay, here's what I thought. And even though I didn't consume it on the big screen. So I think consumption is going to be niche. It's going to be, where are you at? How do you want to consume it? What's convenient? I don't think there's going to be a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah. So you're a Tidal subscriber?
I am. I was a qualifier, though. I was a Tidal subscriber before Jay-Z bought the company.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so I wasn't one of the lucky, the chosen ones.
I mean, as an artist, I was wondering, I mean, it's been much criticised, but I guess it is an attempt, isn't it, to put the artist at the, to embed the artist into the company, basically. And I wondered how successful you felt that was.
Look, I think music historically has really suffered from bad, just economic market fit. And if you look at, like, my career, so you take our first record, Gish. So we released that record in 1991. If you wanted to buy that CD, it cost $10.99 or $12.99, depending on where you were.
Yeah.
That record cost us $30,000 to make. We made it in 3 or 4 weeks. for $14.99, you could buy Apocalypse Now, which is a multi-million-dollar movie project. So I think the value of that CD versus a movie like Apocalypse Now, I think there's a huge disparity in the economic fit, and I think that has been the problem of the music business all along, and that the economics of the product don't support the salaries that they're paying at the top level, and they much like the airlines, they kind of live in this anachronistic world with these anachronistic ideals and pretend that things are kind of not how they are, and it continues to suffer. And people always say, well, what about Napster, blah, blah, blah. Well, if music had a good economic market fit when Napster came along, Napster wouldn't have been that big of a deal. And even if you look at now, like if you look at like economic fit right now, it costs me $10.99 to subscribe to Spotify, $15 or $14.99 or $19.99 for Tidal, but I can get Netflix for $7.99, right? So I can watch every movie that I want to watch, which are all pretty good movies, for a lower cost than I can listen to, or I can have available to me thousands of songs that I don't even want to hear, and in an environment that's poorly curated. They can't deliver anything to me that I want to listen to beyond kind of what my friends suggest, and I'm forced to overpay for that as well. So I think, look, somebody said to me, well, what about Apple? What about Beats? And I got in a conversation with a guy about Apple, Beats versus Spotify, and they were like, well, what does Apple have that Beats doesn't have? And I said, well, for one thing, they have 750 million people that have paid for music. Right? So what if you took those 750 million people and you just charged them $2 a month for everything that's on iTunes? You've got $1.5 billion in revenue per month right there, which outpaces anything the music industry can offer right now. And if you take that even further and you attach a dollar surcharge to, say, your AT&T phone bill or something else that makes all that music available, the economics exponentially increase. So I think, there's available solutions out there for the music business, and I'm not saying that those are the solutions, but those are at least some of the things that we can look at to create parity in the market, and it makes some reality available for both the consumer and the content creators. Because for me, like Spotify, it's a zero-sum game. As a content creator, I make more from Pandora than I do from any streaming service. And secondarily, it's a relationship that's based on a rev share with a record company, whereas satellite, streaming, Pandora, those types of services pay direct to content creators. So it's a totally different market. And there's some legislation out there right now. They're trying to enact fair play to fair play that probably will get shot down by NAB. But at least it's a step in the right direction. But I think until music is fairly priced in regard to everything else that we have available to us on our phone or on our computer, there's still going to be this kind of anachronism attached to the economics of it.
So what should young bands do? Are they at a position where they should just go for a menu of options, like they can just employ their own radio pluggers and bypass the record company structure completely? Should they just do a deal with Spotify direct, for instance?
I mean, again, I think there's, it's a very complicated situation that a lot of musicians, and I'm not saying anybody in particular, but some musicians don't or are not involved in their own business. And they, just by nature of the way, just like a football player has an agent, a musician generally has a manager and an agent as well. The Pumpkins were kind of a unique case because Billy Corgan and I were very involved in the business. We read every book we could get our hands on. We were very OCD about the business. We signed every check. We baked in all the margins on the tours. We did all that stuff. So we're kind of a unique case. But musicians should be able to create music in an environment that allows them to be, that allows some economic sustainability. The record companies continue to pick pockets. They're making deals behind people's backs that don't involve the artists. And until the artists realize that they own the product, and without them, nothing really moves forward, it's going to be kind of the same business as usual.
Yeah. And do you think David Bowie's prediction to you will come to pass? Will bands just stay in and play like a residency so that's streamed worldwide? The Grateful Dead, their show's being streamed, isn't it?
I mean, I think, live streaming is still nascent. It's a very new technology. I think people are still wrapping their heads around it. It's very, I really, I think it's very akin to like when television was invented. If you see early pictures of people watching television, you generally see like a small TV in the middle of the living room with people on their knees kind of in front of it, looking really awkward, staring at it like it's an alien.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where live streaming is right now. There really hasn't figured out the environment in which live stream consumption can take place and drive favorable economics. Television, on the other hand, has had 60, 70 years of environmental adaptability. So now when we watch TV, we've got our living room, we've got proximity to a kitchen, we've got couches, we've created an environment for consumption. Live stream, on the other hand, is done on a phone or on a computer. So we've really got to create tools that wrap that experience in ways that are analogous to the way we experience that stuff, either broadcast or in the real world.
Yeah. And how about monetizing it? Can you sell ads easily against a live event?
Can you what?
Can you sell adverts easily against a live event?
Can you what?
Sell advertising easily against a live event, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really where the future of live streaming is. It's in the hands of the sponsors, and I think as things become more quantifiable from a sponsor standpoint, and the data becomes more revealing, sponsors are starting to know exactly what they're getting now for their money, and that really wasn't the case even 2 years ago when I joined Live One. There was still a lot of murk around CPM, CPE type of engagement, and people were kind of overpaying or being overpromised or just basically being serviced with kind of fudgy numbers. And that's why you see like advertising companies like WPP, IPG creating their own databases, so they're not as reliant on Google Analytics to kind of quantify what the value of their advertising is. So I think as that stuff shakes out, the real value, the real market value of the advertising in regard to live streaming will really come across, and it'll create market parity. And I think that's really where the rubber meets the road as far as the value of live streaming, at least from a sponsor standpoint. From a consumer standpoint, I think it's just going to get better and better. I think there's tons of tools out there now that make live streaming consumption more pleasant. There's polling, there's chat, there's all kinds of social discovery that goes along with it. And really, as human beings, we really all just kind of want to communicate and be understood. So along with the modern social applications, communication is getting better and better. So emoji, there's other linguistic opportunities that are revealing themselves now. And even like, I have a daughter that's 12, my son is 9, and my daughter has an iPhone, of course. When she sends me text messages, it's like this crazy, it's like a cave painting of emoji, and then I have to call her and say, hey, what did you just say? But when she explains it to me, it really ends up being this kind of beautiful representation of an emotional transfer of information, rather than like an OMG or just a text message. So I think that will really open up some opportunities for us to be more emotive in our communication, and that will further legitimize and support the content that we're talking about. Because it's the community, like having played like next to every inflatable beer can in the world, and like played like the main stages, like you realize that the art in and of itself is the art, but it's the communication, like our ability to communicate around the art that validates it. Much like if you stand in front of a painting by yourself for long enough, you can kind of start to get into the brush strokes, or depending on how much you know about art, you can get into it. But as soon as Alex kind of walks up next to me and we start to contemplate it together, we have a conversation, we start to agree that there are components that are very cool, that painting gets elevated, and it starts to be, it gets credible in a different way. And I think those are the types of things that we look for at Live One. Like, as a content creator, I'm always looking for like, how do we build the ideal digital venue that supports the content? Because knowing, like I've played in crappy venues where it doesn't support the band, and the band just makes it impossible for the band to have a good night. And then there's venues on the other hand, like say like Paradiso in Amsterdam or the Metro in Chicago, where no matter how you're feeling, when you walk in there, it's so supportive of the content that you're more than likely going to have a great night. And like we don't have that digitally right now, but those are the things we're trying to create, at least at Live One, and that's kind of the sweet spot for me, because it's that altruism and that communication that allows the content to kind of be what it is, which is kind of beautiful representation of art.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I think that's a good place to stop.
Yep.
Thanks very much, Jimmy. Thanks for listening.